Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Graduate Student Council virtual orientation for the 2018 AERA Annual Meeting hosted in New York City. We have gotten together with the Graduate Student Council to provide this virtual orientation for folks that may not be on site during our orientation on site. And so I wanted to give you all some information as you all prep for going to New York City for the annual conference. And so I'm going to have our three panelists go ahead and introduce themselves shortly before we jump into some questions that we've created that are geared for giving you some information on how to navigate the annual meeting, especially if you're first time or attendees or on the job market, and then some information in terms of prepping and as you're packing and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started. So if we can have our panelists go ahead and introduce yourselves and give us your name, your institution, your role within the Graduate Student Council, and maybe one of your favorite Graduate Student Council experiences.
Sure, I'll go first, Bernice. I am Kate Rollert French, and I just graduated from Michigan State University this past August. So now I'm actually doing a postdoc at Wayne State University in the great state of Michigan. I am I guess I'm the GSC advisor at this point. I was the former chair and then chair-elect, which Keisha and Weha will share their experiences about momentarily. And my favorite GSC experience, I guess I'm going to have to say it's mostly cumulative. I think just the people I've met from all over the country and even world through the GSC has been really valuable, but just also a really rich experience for me. It kind of gives me a sense of belonging when I go to AERA now, because I look forward to seeing people that I usually only see at AERA or other academic conferences. So that definitely started at AERA. And I remember being a new graduate student, actually, when we had AERA in Philadelphia. And I didn't know anyone, and I was there by myself, and I felt like, I had one presentation, but then really didn't have anything else going on. And I just met all these wonderful people in the GSC and through the GSC that really made me feel welcome. And then I kept in contact with them over the years, and I'm still friends with many of them today, even as they're in their academic careers. So that's really been special to me, and I think that's my favorite experience.
Great, thank you. Weja, are you on here?
Yes, I am. So my name is Weija, and I'm a third-year doctoral student at the University of Washington, Seattle. And I'm the chair-elect in the GSC this year. And I guess my favorite GSC experience is actually working with different graduate students to achieve a goal and to work everything happen.
Great. And then Keisha.
Okay, I was trying to unmute my audio. Hello. So my name is Keisha Serbois. I am the current chair of the Graduate Student Council. I'm at the University of Hong Kong. It is early morning here, which is why you will not see me on video. My favorite, so a little sentimental moment. My favorite GSC experience was last year as I was getting ready to transition from chair-elect to chair. I was, Weija, no, don't take this too seriously, but I was terrified because of the responsibilities. This is the highest leadership position I've ever had. And I just had all of these, insecurities and doubts. And Kate gave me a book that said, I can do it. She knows my research area is really strongly focused on children's books. And it was this awesome children's story about having resilience and drive and determination. And she wrote this really beautiful message. And so in that moment, I realized that the Graduate Student Council is so much more than a leadership position. It's a chance to really establish awesome connections. And that's what I've strived to do this year for all graduate students.
Well, great. On that note, let's go ahead and jump in here. So first, we're going to start with a set of questions that are going to be just general Graduate Student Council general overview questions to kind of give you a sense of, if you haven't heard of the Graduate Student Council, who we are. So our first couple questions are, what is the AERA Graduate Student Council, the GS, commonly known as the GSC, and how is GSC positioned within AERA?
Sure, and I'm happy to field that question, Bernice. I think the best way to describe the AERA Graduate Student Council is a segment of the governing body within AERA that governs and advocates for graduate students within the organization. Technically, I think constitutionally, the Graduate Student Council is classified as a special interest group, or a SIG. But because our membership, or the membership of graduate students, is so vast, I think almost 20 or 30% of the entire membership of AERA, I think we have a greater role in kind of deciding on, what AERA is going to do at each of the annual meetings, and then also in advocating for our members as graduate students. So how it's positioned within AERA. So AERA is governed by the executive board, and that's comprised of the president-elect, and usually the past president, and then a bunch of elected officials, which are just people that represent different divisions within AERA. If you are not familiar with AERA, it is kind of a difficult organization to understand right off the bat because it's very complex. But in a nutshell, there are divisions, and then there are SIGs. So there are divisions A through L, and then there are SIGs that there are way too many to number here, or to list here. I think there might be close to 200, or maybe even more. And so the executive board kind of oversees those divisions and those SIGs, and they work collaboratively with those divisions and those SIGs to function as the American Education Research Association, which kind of advocates for educational and academic research and just, social science research in general on a national scale and also international scale. So the Graduate Student Council is situated within that body. We act as a SIG, but I think because we have such great numbers in our organization, we often have more agency than, I would say, most SIGs, or at least the ear of those making the decisions. So the chair, for example, of the Graduate Student Council assumes kind of an automatic role on the executive board during the term that they serve the position as chair. So in that role, they get to participate in kind of all of the decision making that happens at the executive council level, but also it's a chance for the graduate students to have kind of a liaison and have agency in the greater decision making body. So on a more, I think, anecdotal, informal, I guess I should say, description of the Graduate Student Council, it's a network of graduate students working together, almost like a mini AERA governance. So within the Graduate Student Council, we have our own chair, we have our own past chair, we have our own chair-elect, and then we also have representatives from each of the divisions A through L. And there has been, I think there's web secretary, junior newsletter editor, our community liaison, and then I think there might be one other position that has been added to the Graduate Student Council as one of the kind of leadership positions within the GSC. And then each division, A through L, has their own kind of inner workings of governance that kind of oversees what each division of the Graduate Student Council does. And typically, those Graduate Student Council divisions work closely with the divisions within AERA. So their VPs, the division VPs, are usually in contact and plan closely with the division reps. So in a nutshell, that is what the Graduate Student Council is.
Great. Thank you. So now that we know what the GSC is, let's talk a little bit about navigating the annual meeting. And this is more so just general information for everybody. So the couple questions that we have is sort of a two-part question, but what is the best way to navigate this conference of the annual meeting? And then for those that may have already gone to or looked at one of the conference books for the annual meeting, it's pretty much the size of a phone book. So what's best to use in terms of searching sessions while you're planning your days? And this is open to all three of our panelists.
Well, this is a very convenient way to advertise the social media platforms for the AERA Graduate Student Council. This year, we have really utilized social media, and we will continue to do so. But within our Facebook page, which is under AERA Graduate Student Council, we have started a marketing campaign that every single day we are announcing a different speaker and sharing their bio and their photos. So you not only have an idea of the session they're in, you have background information on who they are. And we've also mirrored this on Twitter. But in addition to that, we've shared helpful screenshots that other council members have created that basically give people a step-by-step visual on how to search for graduate student events within the AERA Annual Meeting digital program, if you don't want to lug around the phone book printed version. And Weijia has worked diligently this year, the chair-elect, to put together the GSC brochure, which when you come to the annual meeting, make sure to go to the Graduate Student Council booth. We're in the registration area. You won't miss us, because then we'll have a printed out brochure that lists out everything in a very thin sheet of paper, laying out all of the Graduate Student Council panels, fireside chats, division panels, all of that in one convenient location.
All right. Anybody else have any other tips on looking at the program, best ways?
Yeah, I think Keisha covered a lot of it, and I think having social media now really helps give graduate students kind of a springboard of where to start. I recommend planning ahead. I know it kind of depends on too where you are in your career as a PhD student. So if it's your first or second year and you're not really sure what your research interests are concretely yet, and you haven't really become familiar with the greats in your field, then I would highly recommend just starting with kind of sessions that are targeted for graduate students specifically, kind of the catch-all that helps you manage, the crazy world of academia. But then I think for graduate students that are further along in their careers, maybe even in the dissertation phase, especially if they're interested in pursuing like a research-based academic job, I would recommend using the tool on the website where you can search, for specific events. You probably know, the greats in your field of research, and oftentimes they're at AERA, which is really neat. So you can, search for what sessions they're presenting in or attending, and then you can, go and see them speak. And oftentimes you can even speak with them and kind of get their take on how your research contributes to, that scope of work that's already established. So I think the search engine on the website is really helpful, way more helpful than the phone book. And it's not a waste of paper, so I like that as well. So yeah, I think I echo what Keisha says, but then definitely use that tool online.
Right. What should conference attendees do after attending a large conference like AERA?
My first response was breathe deeply, exhale, sleep, sleep.
Yes.
But on a very practical level, the very first thing I do after every AERA session, whether it be that day or if it's too busy and I have to wait to the end. All of the panels you attend, whether you speak on that panel or really strong academic panels that you attended for your own research development, go back and download those citations, check those references that people, because so much information is shared during the various sessions that you find out that, you know, you have a lot of information thrown at you, a lot of valuable references, a lot of clear-cut strategies that can help you in piecing together your own dissertation or your own academic paper that you may be publishing. And if you don't capture what you wrote or look up the reference that you may have just shorthand cited on your own notes, you may forget what you were saying or what you thought when it's time for you to go back and harvest all of those citations. And of course, there's other things you can do, but I'll let Weijia and Kate talk to that. But that was the most important thing I realized. Make sure you collect the references and useful citations that are shared.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I agree. Definitely take a break if you can. Do nothing for a couple days. I think that's a good way to kind of rejuvenate yourself and, you know, take time to decompress. But I try and follow up with the important contacts. So if you did meet someone or, you know, people, send them an email and say, you know, hey, it was great to meet you, great to see you, and then kind of follow up on, you know, whatever you were planning to follow up on. I try to do that pretty timely, and, you know, within the first week or so after the conference.
Okay. Next question. What are some practices or strategies that you suggest to capture, organize, and make sense of new ideas? So again, thinking about what can we do once we head home from AERA? What are some good tips to sort of process all of the information that we've taken in?
So this is an area that I am currently trying to master. So I'm open to suggestions if anyone has great organizational ideas for conference experiences and takeaways. And I've been going to this conference for, I think this is going to be my 6th one in New York. So yeah, I'm still trying to come up with a way to be organized about writing things down and capturing the week.
Yeah.
Okay, so one little tip I sort of stumbled into last year. AERA in San Antonio, they gave us these awesome moleskin type notebooks. I see Bernice nodding because she was like, yeah, they did really well that year. Like every year it's a toss-up. You never know what the surprise registration gift will be. But the notebook was awesome because I put, you know, all of my notes, all of my things in one location. And I noticed that someone had left their notebook in like a different session. And then it made me think, oh, wait, if I lose my notebook, I'm pretty much, you know, in a really bad situation. And so what I started doing is after I would write something in my notebook, I would take a couple of screenshots on my phone. And that way, no matter what happens to your notes or if you lose stuff or if you find yourself writing on various pieces of paper, if you're one of those people that just write on the closest thing to you, make sure to take a couple of screenshots with your phone or pictures of your notes with your phone, because it's like backing up your thoughts right then. And even if you lose it or you forget to go back and check, you have a digital version, which is much easier to add to your personal notes on your computer.
That's a good one. Weijia, anything else to add?
Yes, I'm actually fan of technology apps, so I would like to use a technology like note-taking app, and so that I could take the photos and upload it as soon as possible. And one last tip I have is after I get back from AERA, just have a summary of what you got as soon as possible, just in case you forget everything after a long time.
Great. I think the only other thing that I would add to that I've started doing is I usually in my notebooks, I write everything down and I keep one sheet probably at the beginning where I'll write down like just random ideas for either future projects or things to go back and think about or like ponder on a little bit more after the fact. And I keep that all in one sheet of paper so that I know exactly where all of my great light bulb ideas are in one space.
And I'll throw in one more tip. And since we're not like being paid to advertise anyone, I'm intentionally not saying any names. Like if anyone's connected to a company and you want us to advertise for you, think of us next year. But anyway, you definitely want to download, in addition to note-taking apps, you want to download some sort of app that lets you take pictures of business cards. Because if you're networking, like if you came in here to, network and, move through the various channels of this annual meeting, you're going to receive a lot of business cards, and you should be handing out a great deal of business cards. But to keep all of that information central, download an app that allows you to, basically absorb all that information quickly within one centralized location.
That's good. All right. And thinking about two types of sessions, if you're wanting to network, this is a great segue. Should students attend more of the networking and social events or the formal research presentations while at AERA?
So I think that's a tough one. I think it depends on where you are kind of in your program. For me, it was more helpful to go to the networking and social events early on in my PhD career because it helped me kind of get to know more about my own research interests and, see myself as some of these, incredible women that, are leading the field today and kind of, in identifying role models. And so I felt like that was really helpful in kind of showing me the possibility of, what I could do with my PhD and how my experiences at my university would play out. Now and later in my career, I think towards like maybe the fourth or fifth year, I found more value in the research presentations because I have an idea of, my own research interests and, and how I could contribute to kind of a specific scope of work and build off of others' work. So now I think I'm more interested in the formal research presentations, but definitely at the beginning it was networking and social events. And I still love the networking and social events and getting the chance to meet new people. I mean, that's still something I try and take advantage of every AERA. Because it's fun, and I guess that's the only reason you really need. You should try and have some fun while you're at AERA. You shouldn't make it, completely business the whole time because you're usually in a new city. Most of the areas I went to, it was a city I'd never been to before. So get to explore kind of the culture of that city, but you do it alongside, colleagues that you know through AERA. So it's kind of a neat experience.
Well, when the segue is that simple, how could I not jump in? Speaking of awesome networking events, you all listening, make sure you come to the Graduate Student Council joint orientation / reception. Kate, you could jump in, but I don't remember how long it's been since the GSC has hosted a reception. But it used to be something.
I think it's been many years that we've had one actually like at the conference or in one of the conference venues. We've had like unofficial ones off site, but I have not been around when we've had one on site. So it's really a neat opportunity this year.
Well, that's saying something because you've been involved with the GSC for about 6 years?
Yeah, since,
Yeah.
this will be my 6th year.
Okay, so I'm citing you as like my expert authority. So it's been over 6 years. Did you see how I just got grandiose just then? It's been over 6 years since the GSC has hosted a reception. And while I definitely agree that you are at the annual meeting to refine where you're going in your research and further refine yourself as a global researcher, because that's definitely where the GSC is going, thinking of yourself as a global researcher, it is in networking. You know, my personal experience, it's been in my ability to attend social events like the GSC reception, where you start making not only great professional connections, but you may find yourself connecting with other graduate students from all around the world, because AERA, as Kate mentioned, the GSC is the second largest contingent within AERA, and our numbers keep growing. In fact, the most recent numbers showed that we're over 30%, like we're at 30% and a percentage, and it might be even higher next year. But we are the only division within AERA that is consistently growing at the pace in which we are. And that is a lot of leverage in terms of your ability to network with other researchers, other students who are going through this with you, who bring in different skill sets. So coming to that reception is ideal for you growing your own network of great people, because as we all know, this dissertation journey can be very isolating and lonely. And while you are networking in all of your panels, it's also very wise to network with a few of your colleagues who are also on this journey with you, because a team effort, I can say this being on the GSC, we are so much stronger as a team. I would not be anywhere near as effective as chair if I didn't have a dynamic council. This virtual webinar would not have happened unless I had someone like Bernice that agreed with what we were doing and jumped on board to make it happen. It's the exact same thing with your dissertation. You may think it's a singular, lonely experience, but it doesn't have to be. It's much, much better if you have a group around you of people you can call on or get in touch with, and you meet these type of people at things like this. Okay, I'm done with my commercial.
Let's go on. So what are some tips for approaching a fellow graduate student or senior counsel about potential research collaboration? How developed should your project ideas be? And what if you know someone's work but have not met them personally? How can you approach that while at the annual meeting?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I would advise not to lead with the idea, or at least the verbalized request of research collaboration. I think that's something that people definitely, kind of want to get to know you, or earn your trust, or, earn your respect, and get to know your research even outside of, who you are as, just a nice person. So I think you have to approach that carefully. I think questions regarding, ideas, or, if you're critical of somebody's theory, or, or how they conducted some study, or, their perspectives on X, Y, Z, I think it's fine to have a conversation about those things. But I think the best thing you can probably do is schedule a time, meet, and then maybe express your interest in their work, or how you might build off their work. Schedule a time to meet at a later date, to have a more formal conversation that I would probably spend a lot of time preparing for in advance. And then maybe, the idea for collaboration comes about. It's tough. I think that the nature of academia, especially right now, unfortunately, is very, I think, reserved, and it's not like other fields of research where it's open to unlimited collaboration, and you can have, 10, you can even, I think I saw a medical paper the other day with like 15 different names as authors. And I don't see that as much in educational research. So I think people are a little more careful about who they choose to collaborate with, kind of based on that person's reputation or based on that person's knowledge and skill set that they can bring to a type of research study. Let's say, for example, that you're a brand new graduate student and you are kind of still developing your research agenda, so you're not known for your research interest per se, but you might have some really great advanced kind of statistical knowledge or ability that I know some of the older, more senior scholars are often, hoping to find. You might introduce that as, I got my degree in economics and I'm familiar with using R and Stata, and I've worked with these big data sets before. I think that might draw interest in, how can you bring something to the table as part of a collaborative effort, instead of just being almost like a mentee with people that you don't know. Granted, your advisors at institutions and informal mentors, I think that they do have a duty to kind of show you the ropes and show you how to develop your research and take you on as co-author and as a part of your journey as a doctoral student. I like to see this a lot at universities, and I'd love to see it more kind of across universities. I don't see it as much across universities, the mentoring, but I would be leery and careful about collaborating with or requesting collaboration with senior scholars or complete strangers from the get-go. I think the best thing you can do is have a conversation, informal conversation, and then make an opportunity to follow up in the future, and then kind of build that relationship first, so you get to know each other as people, you get to know each other's research independently, and then maybe talk about how you can collaborate on projects in the future that are research based.
Great, thank you. Any other last tidbits?
I agree with pretty much everything Kate mentioned, and I would also just add, take courage when you're at the AERA annual meeting. If depending on the type of person, they may have a crowd around them, they may not, and you're just so in awe of them physically being in front of you that you may start to doubt whether or not you should approach them or if you have anything valuable to say. Take courage. Even if in the worst case scenario you go up and you flub the whole situation and you walk away feeling crazy, it's valuable for that researcher to know that you were so moved by what they did or so inspired by what they wrote that you wanted to talk with them. Kate said it, and I second this. It's better to approach them from a position of, how this research impacted you or what they may have said in the session that moved you, than you strictly coming at this from a selfish point of view in terms of how can you help me go further? Because that's really what you're saying when you immediately jump into let's write, let's collaborate, because you haven't done the groundwork of even understanding who this person is beyond all of those titles, and if they want to work with you, because that is another collaborative relationship that requires a good amount of trust in terms of, can I trust you to deliver as you promised? That's not something I can establish after 3 minutes of network talking. So I do say that take courage and be your genuine self. Now, if you happen to be someone who's genuinely selfish, that's a whole nother journey that you'll have to work on. But, if you're coming up as, a person who's a student, who's coming up, like the feeling of reading someone who has said something that you identify with in a way you understand is something people never tire of hearing.
Yeah, I feel like it's much easier to approaching the fellow graduate student, but it's really hard to connect with senior scholars. But I mean, we could do it strategically. Like the world is like kind of small and big, so you always could find another connection that who could connect you with a new connection. With that said, it means you could find the people to help you connect with another scholar if you're really interested in their work. That's my suggestion.
That's a great suggestion, Rachel. Thank you.
Great. So now we're going to move into a couple of questions specifically for first-time attendees. So what advice would you share to graduate students attending AERA for the first or maybe the second time?
I think just have fun, pace yourself. I think the very first conference, like you should kind of manage your expectations and, you know, get to know the lay of the land, get to understand the conference structure, figure out, you know, even figuring out where the sessions are in a city like New York when we're in all these different hotels and, you know, you have maps of hotels, each one you have to figure out. I think that's a small victory and just finding the session that you were trying to attend. So, yeah, take it easy and make time for fun and make it an enjoyable experience. Like, you know, you should come home exhausted in a good way, that it's been a rewarding and meaningful trip, but that, you know, you got some things out of it that you really enjoyed. But, you know, you shouldn't kind of, I would hate for someone to experience it and be like, oh, that was exhausting, like that was work, and see it as, you know, this negative thing that they don't want to do every year, because that's the beauty of the annual conference, is you get to do it annually. So definitely make time for fun, and you know, it's okay to say no, and it's okay to miss out on some things and prioritize what's most important.
Yes, fight FOMO, which is fear of missing out, because there's so much happening at the annual meeting that is inevitable that you're going to come to sessions where there are two amazing sessions at the exact same time in different hotels. Unlike San Antonio, you can't just like run to one end of the auditorium and, you know, make it to both. Like, you're going to have to make some clear-cut decisions. And I also just want to add that for those who are attending for the first or second time, the GSC was aware that, you know, New York can be an intimidating landscape if you are new to such a metropolitan city, such as Manhattan or such as New York. And we have recruited amazing graduate students who are also studying in the New York area to serve as local liaisons. And they will be at the Graduate Student Council booth within the registration area within the first 2 days. So I believe it'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So if you ever find yourself lost in terms of physical logistics, you have questions about like, how do I navigate from my hotel to this hotel? Or what are affordable places I can go to stretch my budget for food, blah, blah, blah. We have local students who are firsthand, you know, sources of information that you can approach, which is another reason why it's great to be flexible as you encounter the annual meeting. You may have your mind set on something and then you hear about something else. Don't be so hard on yourself if you suddenly change plans, because there's so much there.
Weijia, any tips for first-time attendees?
Oh, I agree with what Keisha said.
Perfect. Okay. Should first-time attendees check out completely new topics or different divisions, or should they stay mostly in the area that they're researching now, or maybe the division that they belong to
now? I forgot to mute myself, so you guys heard me laugh. Okay, so I guess that means I need to answer first.
Yes, it does.
I'm sorry, I laughed at this because honestly, the first time I went to AERA, I lost my mind. I did everything and anything that was not connected to my research area. Like, I went in, I had the privilege of going my first year of my PhD program. And I went to any and every meeting, panel that I thought might be connected to something I was interested in researching. And I jumped around the whole spectrum. The second year, I was far more focused because by then I knew where I was in my research journey. And so I just went to everything related to that. So from that perspective of having done both, I honestly think it's good to have a mixture. Like if I could do my first year all over again, I probably would have had a few days that were focused on where I knew I was going to focus my research on. And I would give myself maybe a few hours within one day or one whole day where I just allowed myself to explore whatever I felt drawn to.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I do the same thing. You know, definitely don't feel tied down. Yeah. See as much as you can, as much as you're willing to take on, and do exactly what Keisha did. I think that's a great plan.
Mm. And we should also add, try to find out which sessions have food. Being that New York is not San Antonio, I'm going to tell you from a privileged position, the food isn't going to be anywhere near as generous, guys. So stock up on granola bars, soy joys, like have some food in your bag, because unlike San Antonio, you are not going to walk into these beautiful spreads of food. It's 2 to 3 times higher price point wise. So just heads to the wires, Go to the events that have food, but expect to have tasty appetizers and possibly something to drink. But again, New York is expensive, so even that will help you reduce costs. But also go for the knowledge. Let me come back in as a professional. You're there to grow your mind as well as feed your spirit and your body. But, we're students, and some of those travel per diems aren't that generous. So make sure you attend the AERA. They have a social event, and they do one every year. Last year, it was outstanding. Kate, do you remember what was that, where it was an evening social event? It was like the AERA reception. They had a live band, a beautiful spread.
Yeah, I think it was usually I think it's after the presidential address. I want to say that's what it was last year. But last year's was amazing. I mean, they had so much food, great entertainment, great. I mean, it was everything that I'd love to have a GSC social be.
Right?
And I mean, if we can collaborate and, just do a great AERA wide social, I think the one in San Antonio was phenomenal. Definitely the best one I've ever been to. So yeah, look for events like those where there's like a reception, maybe a talk and then a reception afterwards.
Right.
They usually have food.
Because then you can network, which is tying in what we talked about, the socializing aspect, in addition to helping your budget.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the point. All right, so now we're going to switch over to folks who are attendees that are maybe on the market. So what are some tips for conference attendees on the job market and what they can do during the conference?
So I'm just going to jump in real quick on a professional perspective in my role as chair and say we were very considerate of that this year in the way we planned the GSC panels, and specifically for graduate students or early career researchers who find themselves coming to AERA Annual Meeting to look for jobs and network effectively as a budding professional. Please make sure you attend the CEO Global panels. They have 2 fireside panels within the GSC. I believe they're on Saturday. They're both on Saturday, and they are conveniently scheduled back to back. And they are specifically targeted towards graduates who are interested in jobs outside of academia as well as within academia. And one of their panels is on developing your personal brand, And another panel is on time management, which is something that applies across the board. But the people who are leading these sessions are well-established or retired CEOs of major corporations or high-ranking administrative leaders within corporate partners. So they have a valuable perspective that you don't usually see within AERA, but I thought it would be very valuable for those of us who are going to be navigating the job market, because you do have to think strategically if you do want to be in academia, or even if you want to be outside of it. The landscape of academic positions has changed, and it's not as easy for people to graduate with their doctorate and immediately be absorbed into academia. You have to be a little more strategic. So having those perspectives would be very valuable. But there are other division panels that pay close attention to the job market. So when you go through the GSC brochure or you look at our online program, pay attention to those panels that we have set aside, because they are highly geared towards the market.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think especially what Keisha and the GSC has done this year to really emphasize, the both academic and non-academic job market, and, opportunities for graduate students who are coming up to that time in their career when they need to find a job. I think, yeah, that's been incredibly helpful, and a great resource that we really haven't had in the past. This is, I know historically, I think the AERA used to do a long time ago, maybe like at least 6 years ago. I heard about this event they would hold, which was almost like a job fair, where, they'd even do interviews kind of on the spot for positions that were open at their institutions. I don't think they do that anymore, because we're so connected with Skype, and, we can virtually connect so much easier than we could even a decade ago. But I think there are sessions, like Keisha mentioned, by divisions, where they really do, if they don't have like direct opportunities for people entering the job market, they definitely have ways to take advantage of the resources that a division is provided to be successful in the job market, but also in even understanding how to structure your search and be exposed to certain jobs or certain social networks that might be advantageous to your future job.
Yeah, and my suggestion is that just always be prepared to have a 1 to 3 minutes, like elevated speech about who you are and what you're going to do. Although I'm not on the job market yet.
Great. Do you think it polite to ask faculty members about postdoctoral options or open positions at their institutions? And if so, what do you think is the right way to do so?
I think that's a great question. To be honest, it's something I've never done. So I technically will be on the job market next year, so I might have to report back.
You'll give us the update.
Let you know. Yeah, we'll have to do an amendment to this webinar.
So Weija, follow up with Kate. And your role is, you guys do a webinar next year, reach back and be like, Kate, what happened?
I will say though, for institutions that do have open positions, oftentimes if you go to their receptions, a lot of times they'll have either like a flyer or they're sort of scoping out, to see if they connect with it. But I've seen folks that have like their little one-page job descriptions and things like that, and it's usually at their receptions that they'll sort of have those out for folks. But it may be a institution by institution based.
Oh, that's great.
No, that's very helpful. Berenice, where would you recommend graduate students, when they search for jobs, on like in a global context on their own? Are there any good websites that graduate students can go to? I know I go to a couple, but you might be more knowledgeable about
You know what?
the best ones now.
I think the ones that I look at a lot more are specifically geared for higher ed, but I know that a lot of folks will turn to the specific professional associations that are specifically tied to their own field because they have more targeted job postings versus AERA. I think because we're so big, I don't think that they tend to do as much of that open position sharing.
Right.
But I know for me and what I've heard from a lot of folks is that a lot of them turn to sort of the listservs and for professional associations that are specifically tied to their field area. Okay.
I can throw in one quick thing.
Okay.
Real quick. One thing we are working on within the graduate student reception, we have partnered with a couple of I don't want to drop any names, but it's on the flyer. But we've partnered with the University of Hong Kong, and one thing we've asked them to do specifically is invite people within their network from a university perspective. So we've invited them to bring in, deans and people who are there specifically to connect with graduate students within Asia, which is where I'm at, because they are always looking to recruit strong scholars. But sometimes there's a disconnect as, scholars in the US may feel like that's too far or that's too foreign. So the reception is another attempt to bridge that gap. And so we will not, be so blatant as to say like, this person is here looking for, someone to hire. They're going to be blended into the crowd. So as you network, collect business cards and follow up in an email. That's really the best tactful way to do it. After you get the business card and you've had a pleasant exchange, follow up in an email asking about possible positions or any openings, or say something like, please keep me in mind. If a position opens up, I think I'd be a great fit for your university based on that.
Yeah, that's great. So we're going to transition a little bit and provide some information. I'll ask you all some questions around what to pack. So as we're thinking about, it's a little over a week now, so folks are starting to think about what sort of things they need to pack. So what kind of attire do we need for the annual meeting?
I think this is kind of evolving. I know people wear all sorts of different things. I think I think it's almost like, going to a Broadway show in New York. You're going to see some people that are in formal tuxedos and you're going to see some people in jeans. So I really, I don't know if there's one good answer. I think you probably see more like business casual than you do super casual. And then, I was at AEFP in Portland a couple weeks ago, and everyone was very business professional there. So I think you see a variety though at AERA. I don't know, Keisha, you might know more than I do, but personally, I try and just wear what I usually wear to work every day, which is like slacks and a shirt, or clothes that were left over from when I was a teacher. Really, that is kind of my go-to for wardrobe options.
Well, my golden nugget of wisdom to men and women: wear comfortable shoes. Invest heavily in a pair of comfortable shoes that can transition from business casual to business. And for me, that translates into a nice pair of black flats, or a couple of pairs of flats that have great cushion, or some sort of shoe, because again, this year we're in several hotels. And you can safely assume that at some point you may lose track of time and you may need to quickly get from one space to another. That is not the time to be held back by your footwear choice. So I'm trying to say that in a gender neutral way, but also for those like myself who are traveling from international locations, because we have luggage restrictions, and most of the times when we travel to other countries, the last thing you want to do is pack a heavy suitcase. But New York, when we get there, the weather may not be tropical. So I typically bring a lot of dresses and a denim jacket or some sort of blazer that I can wear repeatedly with a dress or some sort of outfit that is interchangeable. So whatever you do, try to put together outfits that can easily transition. Like if it needs to be more business formal, you throw on a blazer. If you find yourself going to a Broadway play, you can take off that blazer and then you're dressed for evening. Like think that way in terms of putting together your attire.
That's great advice.
Easier said than done. I acknowledge that part, but it sounds great on the webinar. So give me that.
So that's great advice. That's great advice.
So moving on then, and thinking about some of your items that you three pack, what are some of your must pack items as you make your way to the annual meeting?
An umbrella.
Okay.
Business cards.
Oh, nice.
What was that?
Business cards.
Business cards.
I'd say a passport and an ID, just because I had a good friend who lost her wallet and then needed to fly home. So now whenever I travel, I try and bring 2 forms of ID so you can fly.
Yes, listen, this is not the time to be in the United States without proper documentation. So,
yes. Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
I'd also say bring a scarf or some sort of light sweater because it's freezing inside of these various panels and conferences that you're going to be attending. And even if it's a beautiful day outside, you can safely assume it will be much colder once you get to your destination.
Great. Okay. Now we're going to have a couple questions about how can we get connected. So folks are getting ready to and we want to make sure, like Keisha said, one of the big points for the GSC is to make sure that students feel connected and have this sense of belonging when they come to AERA events and specifically the annual meeting. So I know we talked about this a little bit more, but maybe we can get some sort of shout outs to maybe some other places that folks can jot down to where they can meet other graduate students, maybe specifically within their division.
Mm-hmm.
Probably go to their division's fire chat, the grad students' fire chat.
Yes. And I would say too, I think the 2 big things, if you're wanting to connect with folks within your division, the fireside chat, yes, especially because it is geared toward graduate students, and then maybe even the business meeting as well, because sometimes they'll have some special information for graduate students, or you can know sort of who's involved within that division as well, and to sort of get connected within that group.
I absolutely.
Yeah, I'd even say the graduate student sessions. I mean, usually those are a mixture of graduate students in no divisions or they haven't chosen a division, or multiple divisions or one division. But usually we get a mix of all sorts of graduate students in general.
I think, Kate, you just thought of the next question. So
yay!
Thinking of where graduate students can meet students not in the division. So I think Kate hit it right on the head, looking at any of the sessions that are listed within under the Graduate Student Council. I think that's definitely point one. And even at this point too, I think because we always have graduate students in the GSC booth, and I think that that's a place that sometimes gets overlooked. And so if folks are wanting to touch point and connect or have a question maybe specifically for a graduate student, thinking of the graduate student booth as maybe their first stop might be really good. I don't know if there's maybe any other sort of hiding spots where folks can find graduate students.
No, I agree with everything we've all shared. And I will say this. While you may come across a lot of great graduate students in the panel sessions you're attending, that may not be as ideal a moment to connect as if you went to a reception or a division get-together or a pre-conference, because there's only so much time as you transition from another panel or if you're trying to get to that head speaker. So if you come across other graduate students, please don't take personal offense if you feel like you got brushed off or they were very curt with you, because they have the same, aims you have, but it may be directed towards another person. So don't take offense if you come across someone you want to get to know. Make plans to attend receptions or social events within the divisions, because that'll be a much better platform.
Great. All right. So for students that may be on here or once they get to the annual meeting, how can they get more involved within AERA?
Join the Graduate Student Council.
I set that one up just for you, Keisha.
And I tried to knock it out the park. Did you see that? But no, I've been talking a lot. So what about you, Weijia and Kate? Because honestly, Weijia, you will be leading next year and you're going to be great at it. But this is a great opportunity for you to talk to future people who may be involved in divisions, who may be involved as officers, or maybe thinking about running for a GSC council position next year.
Yeah, let's put it in a simple way. Just scan the QR code on our brochure. We have a QR code embedded on the brochure where you could, after you scan it, you could get to every listservs that the GSC have, and also the information with regarding to how you could apply and join the GSC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree with Keisha 100% on this. Like, join the Graduate Student Council in some capacity. You might not be able to, be a division representative or, an elected position, but there's so many other opportunities to be a liaison or do something within a division. And you definitely meet people that way.
Definitely. So final thoughts, we're coming around and wrapping up. So what are your final or best piece of advice for graduate students attending the annual meeting?
Kate, I'm going to defer to you because you're sort of like the veteran at attending these. What wisdom would you give,
The number one thing, like the number one priority of these conferences, is that the question?
Your best piece of advice for any graduate student attending.
I would say go and just enjoy yourself. Have a good time. Like, this is a great space for you to see where you might be someday. Like, and seeing all these great scholars kind of walking around and everyday life. I remember it's almost like the Hollywood of academic research because you see all these people that you read about and you really have a lot of respect for and admire, and then you see them at Starbucks and you actually get to talk to them. And so even if the smallest takeaway is just you have a conversation with someone you really respect and admire, is your biggest takeaway, I think that's a huge thing. And enjoy the city, enjoy the conference, meet some strangers. I think that's my number one piece of advice is, don't just go in there knowing, the people at your university and stick to your, university agenda. I know some universities do that where they have sessions planned out for all of their graduate students, but I would highly recommend the opposite and kind of encourage you to get out of your comfort zone, go meet different graduate students, different scholars, go eat at a restaurant that you've never been to before. You know, try and balance it as, you know, it's definitely a business trip, but it's also a chance for you to kind of partake in the local culture of, you know, whatever city the meeting is in. So yeah, enjoy yourself, number one. And then two, I think start thinking about like your role in the organization as you continue to grow and develop as a scholar or a practitioner.
Great. Any final pieces of advice from Weijia or Keisha?
Pay close attention to the GSC social media platforms, because they will be the most up to date. Like, we will have a lot of live streams, a lot of right there in the moment, like anything that may not be reflected on the printed brochure or the digital program because there was a new edition or something that may be amazing that you may not know of. It's going to be mentioned on our social media platforms. So make sure you're following or you're plugged in if you want the most up-to-date information.
Yeah, great. So actually, take it easy, enjoy the meeting, and don't feel too pressured.
Great. Well, I wanted to thank our panelists for sharing their tidbits of knowledge and guidance for graduate students planning to attend. We are so looking forward to getting to meet graduate students at the annual meeting. Like they've all said, please make sure to seek out the Graduate Student Council sessions, check out the Graduate Student Council booth right by registration, and continue keeping up with us on social media, and we'll give you the most up-to-date and opportunities and events and things that we think that might be of interest to graduate students while we're out in New York City. See everybody soon.
Thank you so much for doing this, Bernice.